Ladies and gentlemen, Season 1, Episode 10, My Moon, My Man, the ending. Good, bad, in between, that's a certain debatable. Let's just run right through this. The meds are starting to wear off faster and faster, which completely tracks. It also tracks that the thing that tends to get his attention is to trying to pull him back to empathy, which has kind of always been what cyberpsychosis is about, so that tracks too. We also finally give a chance for Falco to show off for a bit. He hasn't really had a lot of screen time, a lot of cool time, but he does some hella driving here and managed to take out several vehicles as he's going, so I'm with it. There's also some really cool shots, a top-down shot, which transitions into a wyvern, and an undercarriage shot as the cars go right overhead. Some good stuff. They put the money on display here. There's also this wonderful bit which continues one of the overall themes of the entire setting. It cuts to the two corpos, right? There's corpo lady and then there's corpo guy, right? And she actually makes this line, this is what we get for trusting a fixer with our investment. And then she says to contact security. And he's like, wait, that's going to notify the higher-ups. And there's a little bit of a back and forth as they discuss the situation, but what it boils down to is they're in it too at this point. Yeah, this is pretty much the exact same thing that happened to V. Yeah, actually. My V. Corpo V. Yeah. It's so infighty. It's so funny how even amongst the corporations they cannot stop fighting each other. That's very cyberpunk. There's also this wonderful tidbit where Faraday actually says, you know, they're talking about, oh my god, this is getting too big. And he says, it's nothing that Arasaka's recovery team can't cover up. This is the scene immediately after the scene where the corpos just said, we can't cover this up. Because they can't. This has gone too loud and it's gone too out of their control, just like it should. I'll get back to that in just a second. We see David starts to enter a bit of an interior mind state, just like Maine did. But whereas Maine was kept being in the Badlands and just couldn't associate with the things around him, instead David's is entirely hallucinogenic, which tracks for everything he said. So he just keeps repeating elements from his past over and over, which admittedly frustrates me a little bit because it's functionally flashbacks. But it makes a degree of sense because he just keeps replaying these bits in his mind. It's also probably one of the only things that's allowing him to exist for as long as he can, given how many issues he's having here. We also see another major theme of... Yeah, probably misread. Another major theme of Cyberpunk as a setting. For all their power and strength and control, the corporations don't control things to the extent that you'd think. This is a very major theme of the setting, and almost all the games, books, and all the other things absolutely... Oh, I noticed, Rex. Absolutely touch on this point. Don't mistake me. Like, you getting a happy ending isn't happening in Cyberpunk because of the level of control and influence and dystopia that they have. But if you decide to push back and make noise and make a mess for them, that's going to go badly for them. We see that in this very episode, but this is true in virtually every Cyberpunk work. The moment that you decide to really push back and go loud, they have no real answer for that other than to go loud too. And that makes a mess. And that screws them up because now they're fighting amongst themselves trying to deal with the mess that you have created. In other words, there's not a lot of hope in Cyberpunk, but there is a lot of defiance, which lines up for something called punk. Yeah, the corpos always win going loud. Every time. They do this time, too. Costs them. Costs them a lot. So Rebecca has recognized that at this point David is functionally gone, and we see finally what Rebecca and David actually agreed to earlier. Also, try to be shocked. Lore shocks. Lore shock. I know this is the shocking. Faraday betrayed Kiwi. Moving on. So this is when Max Tack shows up. And I love this bit. This is escalated far beyond a field test. Yeah? This is probably one of the only bits of the entire episode. There's actually two, which I didn't like. It's this bit where they're like, all right, he's got to burn out on his own now. No one can stop him now. And then she says, I can think of one person. And if the scene had stopped right there, I would have been like, okay. But instead, they have to say, we're going to call in Adam Smasher. Who's Adam Smasher? He's a super mega death tomb. It was originally designed for him, so it's fitting he destroy it. If he can't stop him, no one can. Okay, let's go have it. And it gets way too talky and boring in a scene where literally none of the dialogue is necessary. Yeah, literally just, if this scene was just, I could think of someone who could stop him, and then the camera cuts over there to Smasher just sitting in the corner in the dark, done. But instead, they just feel the need to fill up the dialogue here for some reason. It's really strange. A bump in the road of quality, because Kiwi tagged his AV. Also, did you catch that Kiwi managed to still fry one of the goons before she went down? That's also very punk. You may kill me, but I'm going to cause you problems on my way out. So the truck flies right into the AV, and at this point, Evil Lady, Corpo Lady, and Corpo Guy decide to turn on each other, because that's how that works, right? They can't help themselves. If you remember, during one of the endings of Cyberpunk 2077, there's a bit where we actually see several Arasaka executives. And in that meeting, they just can't help themselves from fighting each other. They are so internecine. It's ridiculous. So they keep doing these flashbacks. Let's just keep going. David makes it to the top of Arasaka, just like he always said he would. So he has fulfilled one dream there. I also love how absolutely terrified everyone is once they realize that David's in the room. Like, it goes from this typical stand-up. It's actually a cool roll, right? It's a specific thing. You roll cool. Like, if Evo shows up and says, hey, I want to convince you to give me a little extra on this payment, and I say, I ain't going to do that. What we do is we do a contested cool roll. It's literally a stat in Cyberpunk, and whoever wins the cool roll gets it. And there's a bunch of modifiers, and there's a bunch of things that line it. It's a whole cool system. So they're doing a cool-off, right? They're doing this contest, and then David shows up, and everyone immediately goes, and just all the cool goes away. And now he fulfills mainstream. Yay! By absolutely shrekking his way through here. Almost kills Faraday, not quite. Yeah, there's no saving him at this point. He's completely gone. So now he's already fought for his mother's dream, and he's fought for Main's dream, and now he's got one last dream to fight for. Which is Lucy's, of course. And yeah, Adam Smasher shows up, and that is game. I hate to say it, but that is game the moment that happened. Honestly, I don't want to spoil too much, but all I'm going to say is that Adam Smasher probably shouldn't be the kind of thing you can just, take down. This is final boss territory. You'll also notice he's barely trying. Yeah, Faraday's like, go, do your job. And yeah, Faraday is so self-important, he gives orders to Adam Smasher, whose response is, who are you? Yeah, no, actually, they did a really good job of portraying Adam Smasher in this episode. Like, really good job. This is pretty much him, one-to-one. So, Adam is just way, way, way above and beyond what David can do. So Adam Smasher comes in while Rebecca goes out. I'm gonna be real. That was one of the only deaths that hurt, right there. I didn't want to do this, but I actually freeze framed on her corpse because there's something I've been wondering the whole show, and it's very gross. It's very gory, but it's almost entirely organic. Like, she was mostly meat. She was mostly person and not chrome. Oh yeah, the show knew. The show knew that was a moment. She also goes out exactly how she'd want to. Like a punk. And there's that theme again. Yeah. Yeah. So we lost Rebecca, and Adam's just like, and? It's all meat, and no one leaves the slaughterhouse alive. And he's so sadistic, because that's all he really cares about. This is one of the interesting things about Adam Smasher. He doesn't really care about much other than violence. That's how Arasaka retains control over him. They give him the outlets and they let him stretch, but because otherwise there would be problems. He just wants to have fun killing things. He is your typical sadistic berserker. Yeah, he didn't even notice Rebecca. He was just there to kill things because that's what he wants. Yeah, Sokka brings him the best fight and the best toys, so okay. David, of course, is like, no, I'm not going to let you do that. But Adam Smasher is actually amused by this. Of course he is. You'll notice he also effectively disarms David in like 3 seconds. The moment he finally tries to beat David, he does. Like, immediately, like in one round in D&D terms. So, there goes the anti-gravs, and now you literally can't walk. And there goes your arms. Cool. So, there's this wonderful bit. Adam Smasher actually says, do you think you're special just because you're scrappy? You could prove an interesting construct, but... whatever. Yeah, Adam was just amused by this whole thing. But you'll notice that David did succeed here, because what he did was he distracted Adam long enough for Adam to forget about the dangling keys, which is Falco and Lucy getting away. He actually did it. He actually succeeded at his objective. I will admit, more people survived than I thought I would in this show. Two people survived this show. Two main characters. Yeah. Someone asked, I think it was Lord Harriman asked, what was my prediction earlier? I actually thought it was going to be everyone. I thought it was going to be 100% a sweep. TPK. Still coffee? Extremely coffee. Let's talk about a few more things. We cut to the moon. You know, there's the reward money. There's a lot of people up there. A lot of tourists on the moon. It's like freaking Disneyland up there, which actually makes a disturbing amount of sense. Ugh. The moment we have the Starfighter Hotel up on the moon, we're done. That's it. Pull the plug. And she made it. She got out. She got to feel the sun. Was it worth it? Do I think Lucy's happy? No. This isn't what she wanted. Not really. Yeah, the problem is this ends on a very hell of a to be continued. Can I just say that this actually screams for some kind of follow-up? I don't know if she's in 2.0 for Cyberpunk 2077, but this just screams for some kind of follow-up. You've got to take Lucy somewhere as a character. I'm just saying. I actually thought so too. I thought she was going to take off the helmet and just let herself die. I actually thought that's where the episode was going. So, well, like, she's at a tourist trap, L40. What does she do then? Kill herself? I'll have to look for that DZ Maven, if I remember when we get there. So, individual episode. There's a couple of bumps on the road. You'll notice I completely skipped over the entire scene where him and her were talking during the slow-mo descent because it was a dumb scene. And like I mentioned, there was a skip over with Adam Smasher, but that's two bumps in an otherwise excellent episode. I think I'm really torn here. What are we thinking on this one before we move forwards? I don't blame you on that, Inosians. Yeah, does it reach red? What are we feeling here? Bumps in the road don't prevent something from quality. That's... Oh no, this is definitely not purple. There's no way. Sorry. 040. I do think it stuck the landing. Certainly better than I thought it would. They did good usage of Adam Smasher. They did a good job of... It's only in the final episode, but they finally showcased what is honestly the biggest theme, in my opinion, of Cyberpunk as a setting. That defiance. The screw you. The middle finger as you're dying. That is something that is very Cyberpunk. And for managing that thematically and character-wise, and having the plot stick the landing, I think we'll go ahead and give that extra little boost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 7 yellows, 2 oranges, 1 red. That also locks in our score there. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to find out who won the guessing game, if anybody was even guessing for this one. You had 1 day to guess, so I don't blame you if you weren't. That locks us in. That also locks us in at a solid orange for the entire season. That's interesting. So let's see. We're at 34. Looks like that's going to Bionic Punk. One off. There's a couple of people who guessed very closely, but it does look like Bionic Punk wins it. Pretty sure that qualifies for orange. I can double check my numbers, but if 55 qualifies, 56 does. So Bionic Punk is putting that towards... Give me 1 second, please. Juggling a lot of stuff here. I'm hungry. Dinner's probably going to be cold by the time I get up there. Dragon Age 4. Hyrule Warriors 2. And Horizon Forbidden West. There we go. Yep, nope. Let's go ahead and get rid of both of these shows here. We haven't discussed nudity yet. Come on, Google. Do I still have connection in general? Am I still here? Kafka. Come on. What is Google doing? Jesus Christ. I'll get back to that. I'm pretty sure 55 qualifies as that. Hang on, let me double check this. Yeah, the dock is just straight up not loading. I'm glad I got it to load to figure out who won first, because that would irritate me if I didn't. That's the right percent. And it's 16 per percent category. So, that's 3.5, which is up in orange territory. I think that's right. Whatever. We're going to call it an orange because it's an above average show. And it is. Yes, off the deeper end. You can actually see a lot of that on the spreadsheet here. I'm never going to watch the show again, obviously. But despite not being my thing, and being too bleak, and being too dark, and being too anime, and being too gross, and being too improper usage of nudity, I do think this is a definitely above average show. It is surprisingly consistent in its quality, and it does a lot really right. I will never watch any episode of this again, Mr. Red. Because, yeah, this is, like, look at how few greens we had. Oh, that's right. None. Look at how few blues we had. Oh, that's right. None. It certainly stumbles a little bit, and it took a long time for me to care about several of the characters, and honestly, I never cared about David. Honestly, I never even really cared about Lucy, even though she's more the main character than he is. We had an almost green. It did dip. I'm not going to lie. But there's just other things that help to carry and buoy it up. This is one of the more consistent shows we've covered. Even Mandalorian dipped more often than this. But I wanted to talk about the nudity thing. I know this is a weird place to bring this up, but I didn't really have any better way to bring this up. So y'all know I'm a massive prude, and I have a gigantic oak tree up my ass. However, I think they should have had more sex in this show. Hear me out for a second. One of the biggest themes that goes through the entire work is cyberpsychosis and, more to the point, empathy. The nature of how people connect with each other. That's what cyberpsychosis, even in the 2077 version, really boils down to. It's all about your connections with other people and how much you care about other people. You'll notice that David, in most of the ways in which he manages to retain himself, is by virtue of how much he connects with other individual people. By contrast, Maine only really had Doria. And the moment he lost Doria, that was it. That was game for him. He didn't have any anchors, any empathetic anchors in order to adhere him to someone and actually pull him back from the brink. It's debatable if it was even possible, but without, it's 100% impossible. Now, you're probably thinking, what does sex have to do with empathy? And if you're saying that, you make me sad. See, here's the thing. The show has a lot of nudity. Like, a lot of nudity. But I agree with what Evo said here. A lot of that nudity was just there for shock value, or just because. They didn't do anything with it. I know that sounds weird, but as a tool, all it was there was to up the rating. Like, two people sitting naked while watching out a window is just there. There's nothing there. There's no relevance to it. It's just nudity for the sake of it. Like I said, it's just there to raise the... If they actually had on robes, nothing would change about the scene. This is why I say the scene should actually have had more sex. It should have had more intimacy. It should have had more physical connection, empathy. We actually talked about that before. And that's what really started prompting these thoughts, is because if you're going to do this kind of a thing, and you're going to show his connection to Lucy, and how much that's helping him in order to retain his sense of self, and retain his identity and his empathy, as he's trying to push back against the cyberpsychosis, the scene where the two are just sitting there should have been a scene where the two were actually very, very close to each other, literally physically touching, literally connecting with each other, and showcasing that connection that they had. I don't buy for a second that Lucy matters to this guy, and a lot of that boils down to the fact that they didn't actually show any of it. Now, I don't particularly want to watch two cartoon characters having sex, but what I do want is good storytelling. If you're going to already take the step of having characters who are nude on camera, commit to it. Use it as a storytelling tool. Use it as a part of the narrative you are trying to push. You already have the theme right there on display. Now, interesting little tidbit, I don't know enough behind the scenes about this show to know if this was the intent. It's entirely possible they actually wanted to have this kind of a thing. Now see, that might have worked 040, except that's not what the actual character's actions follow through on. It's very clear that Lucy and David are connected to each other, and that his thoughts for her is the only thing keeping him going, right? It's the only thing that specifically and demonstrably pushes back against his cyberpsychosis. Why would that be true if they were already disconnected? Sense make? Now, if you want to go ahead and not have the sex, then get rid of the nudity. Because it serves no purpose. It's just there to titillate. It's cheap. And that's my overall point. Commit. One direction or the other. I don't care which. Really, I don't. Again, all I care about is good storytelling. If they were going to have the nudity, commit to it. Use it as a narrative point. In fact, showcase some other people who are having sex who don't mean it. Who it's just screwing for them. They got really close to that because they show masturbation on camera twice. 3 times, actually. Now, I know Bionic Punk, but that's sort of my point. I've said this so many times, if you can't do it right, don't do it at all. If you cannot accomplish the story goal you're going for, then just don't include that. It doesn't take anything away from the work to just eject the nudity from the work. Like, none of the scenes where there was a woman, it's always a woman, by the way, who has her nipples showing, had any relevance to the fact that she was nude. So just chunk it over there and do it. And yeah, that's actually a good point. This is a Netflix show for Western money. Why does Japanese censorship even apply? Like, I don't know enough about the behind the scenes to know why they went this direction with it. Yeah, they go out of their way to never show a dick. Did you catch that? We see David nude several times before and after his chroming. But it's always from the back, or very conveniently in the shadows. Like every time he's sitting there on the edge of that bed, there's a very conveniently placed shadow right about where his crotch is. I know this is a really strange complaint to have, but I bring it up because it's a talking point. I'm not really, I guess I am complaining. But I guess my overall point is I found it interesting how much they didn't commit. It's interesting to me, and I wanted to have a discussion. I wanted this to be something we could share ideas on. Because I find it fascinating how they didn't approach this, you know? I do have a theory, and it has no evidence for it whatsoever. So you remember how we've talked about how there's that bias against animation, right? Especially in Western audiences. Which this was aimed for. You already see where I'm going with this, don't you? One of the tricks that has been used for years to show that animation is for adults is to have nudity. Not necessarily sex, just something that would be considered R-rated if it was a live-action work. It's a very, very cheap, common trick that goes back to the 90s. Yeah, exactly. You can't say it's for the kids if it's got TNA. You can't say this is just some childish thing or just some cartoon and all the implications that that has if you got boobs in it. This is a really old trick that's been used for a long time for a lot of shows and a lot of movies to try and say, oh, you know, this animation is for adults. This is adult animation. And this is not a show for kids at all. this is, for the most part, a fairly mature show and a fairly well-done storytelling with fairly good thing. But you get it, right? The nudity was surprisingly juvenile, but it wouldn't surprise me if the reason it's there was specifically to boost the rating, to specifically have that defense mechanism. It feels like something some dude or dudette or dude in between, I need to find another. Dude is already gender neutral. Some dude in a suit had and was just like, hang on. We gotta make sure this is animated. Are we sure this animated show? We need to make sure that we need a way that people know this animated show isn't going to be, seen as a kid's. How do we do it? I've got it. Yeah, a chart man. Yeah. And we've got this scene where there's absolutely no reason for her to be nude. Let's make her nude. They pull this trick several times. In several scenes, I mean. Like, there's several scenes where you could just tell there was like a checkbox to, oh yeah, remove her clothing for this one scene. Why? Doesn't do anything to the scene. Nobody notices it. Nobody comments on it. If she was wearing clothing, it would change nothing. But, show the nipples. Make sure we get that rating. That's my theory. And like I said, it's an interesting talking point because something I've been fighting against since the 90s is the idea that cartoons are for kids. By being animated, it's automatically for children. And that irritates me. That's why I'm not really irritated at the show at this point. I'm irritated at the theory, which I hope isn't right. But for now, I guess that's my final thoughts on the show. This is surprisingly good of a show. It's very, very coffee. But I do insist that it is coffee, not black licorice. There's some obvious quality on display here, and some good craft. And I could absolutely see why there was so much interest in Cyberpunk 2.0 as a direct result of this. So, yeah, I'm with it. Yeah, no, it's very easy. It's very easy to see why people got interested in the game as a result of this show. And it does nail a lot of the themes and vibes of Cyberpunk, even if a lot of it's just here in the very, very last episode. Tomorrow... I'll see you.